over here. Create a new broadcast, different title. Start streaming. All right. Yay, I think we are working. I think it's working. It's live. It did the thing again where it went live before I clicked start streaming, so I guess I just need to be ready for that. Hello everyone, and welcome to potentially the first actual multi-stream, also on YouTube now, because the other ones did not work or were just test streams. Hello, oh my goodness. Hello. Just in case, I don't think anyone new has wandered in yet, but I'm Faolkor the Book Dragon. We are picking up with a story that we started reading over on Twitch on Sunday night. We have been reading through the collection of stories called In a Glass Darkly by Sheridan le Fanu, the most famous of which is Carmilla. And we are on the final story, which is a novella in and of itself, which is called The Room in the Dragon Volant. And we read 5 chapters on Sunday, so we will be starting up with chapter 6, but I will give a recap of what's going on. Hi, Mr. Grilled Cheese. Hello. Hello. Oh, and I think I can switch to a multi-chat here on Twitch, or in OBS. So hopefully I'll be able to catch everybody's comments. Yeah. So, The Room in the Dragon Volant. Noisemaker is Mixed Boy. Hi. Thank you to all of you who are supporting by being in both streams. That's awesome. Phoenix, I am having a good day. It's good to see you. Okay. Like books and stuff. I know. We are coming to the end, actually, of spooky season, which is kind of sad. I mean, we have so many good books to read, but oh my goodness, I've really been enjoying the stories that we've been reading this spooky season. This will be our last bigger story that we read, except we will also be doing an Edgar Allan Poe night, of course, before the end of the month. And also we'll be doing a Mythology Monday bonus stream next Monday. So, and that one I have something special planned. So, as an FYI. I know, but this story might go a little bit, it might last into November. But there's so many good books to read. We are not gonna run out. So, alright, so this story, it is the story of a young man who, it's set in 1815, and the war is over, there's some peacetime afoot, and he has come into a large sum. We worked it out in today's dollars, and it was like he's basically a millionaire. And he's decided what better thing to do with this windfall than to take a jaunty little trip to Paris and gamble a lot. On the road, he comes upon a carriage that is having some trouble, and he stops to help them, and inside the carriage, he sees that there's a young woman. Now, he can't really see anything about her because she's dressed entirely in mourning clothes, like all in black, with a veil covering her face. But she's got like a pretty voice, so he instantly is like, I need to stalk her. There is an older gentleman also in the carriage with her. he's like, could be husband, could be father, not sure. We later find out it is her husband, just with a big age gap. This does not deter our protagonist, though. He follows them like a creep at a distance. And when he sees that their carriage is pulled up at an inn, the Belle Étoile, he also checks in at that inn and then goes searching for her and just walks into her private rooms that they've rented and just stares at her awkwardly for like a couple minutes while she's reading a letter, and then she looks up and is like, get out of here. But then she follows that up by being like a bit more polite, and he interprets this as, she wants me. Like, our dude cannot read the room, right? She's there with her husband. She literally, when she sees him, pulls down her face veil and turns her back. She doesn't want him there. He's so delusional. He rents the room above them and opens his window, and their window is the one below, and their window's open, and she's singing a little song near the window, and he's convinced that she must be singing for him because obviously she would have heard him open his window, and she must know that he's renting it. How would she know? She doesn't know that's his room. Like, anyway, he's paying servants to find out more information about who they are, and he does learn that they are a count and countess. Meanwhile, he makes friends with another man who is staying at the inn, who, oh gosh, what's his ranking again? He's like pretty, the Marquis, a Marquis, because the Marquis delivers a letter to our protagonist because our young man has the same last name as its intended recipient, but it is the wrong recipient. And do we know his first name, our young man? Do we know his first name? We do. He said it at some point. Let me try to find it. The Grand Poobah. Yeah, that's him. Carl. Not Carl, unfortunately. Oh, the Marquis is also in disguise. He's like, don't call me the Marquis, I'm just Monsieur Troqueville. It was said. It was not Renfrew. No, that was a name we made up for someone else. Okay, he's Monsieur Beckett. But, okay. Okay, our man is Richard Beckett. Yeah. Little Dickie Beckett. Yeah. The letter was for a Mr. Stanhope Beckett, so totally different man. Okay. Richard Beckett. All right. So we kind of closed out at the end of that night. He ate his dinner in kind of the main hall, sitting next to the Marquis. And that's that. He's probably hoping to accost this poor young countess on her way out, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Okay. Oh, Jane, it's okay. All right. So we are starting with chapter 6, The Naked Sword. A man who has been posting all day long and changing the air he breathes every half hour, who is well pleased with himself and has nothing on earth to trouble him, and who sits alone by a fire in a comfortable chair after having eaten a hearty supper, may be pardoned if he takes an accidental nap. I had filled my 4th glass when I fell asleep. My head, I dare say, hung uncomfortably, and it is admitted that a variety of French dishes is not the most favorable precursor to pleasant dreams. I had a dream as I took mine ease and mine in on this occasion. I fancied myself in a huge cathedral, without light except from 4 tapers that stood at the corners of a raised platform hung with black, on which lay, draped also in black, what seemed to me the dead body of the Countess de Saint-Alyre. The place seemed empty. It was cold, and I could see only, in the halo of the candles, a little way round. The little I saw bore the character of Gothic gloom, and helped my fancy to shape and furnish the black void that yawned all round me. I heard a sound like the slow tread of 2 persons walking up the flagged aisle. A faint echo told of the vastness of the place. An awful sense of expectation was upon me, and I was horribly frightened when the body that lay on the catafalque said, without stirring, in a whisper that froze me, "They come to place me in the grave alive. Save me." I found that I could neither speak nor move. I was horribly frightened. The 2 people who approached now emerged from the darkness. One, the Count de Saint-Alyre, glided to the head of the figure and placed his long, thin hands under it. The white-faced colonel, with the scar across his face and a look of infernal triumph, placed his hands under her feet, and they began to raise her. With an indescribable effort, I broke the spell that bound me and started to my feet with a gasp. I was wide awake, but the broad, wicked face of Colonel Gaillard was staring, white as death, at me from the other side of the hearth. "Where is she?" I shuddered. "Well, that depends on who she is, monsieur," replied the colonel curtly. "Good heavens!" I gasped, looking about me. The colonel, who was eyeing me sarcastically, had had his demi-tasse of café noir, and now drank his tasse, diffusing a pleasant perfume of brandy. So he's had like a shot of espresso, and now he's having some tea. "I fell asleep and was dreaming," I said, lest any strong language founded on the role he played in my dream should have escaped me. I did not know for some moments where I was. "You are the young gentleman who has the apartments over the Count and Countess de Saint-Alyre," he said, winking one eye, closed in meditation, and glaring at me with the other. Vampire Freak, thank you for the follow. Thank you for the follow. Oh, my lips get early chapped when I read. I believe so, yes, I answered. "Well, Junker, take care you have not worse dreams than that some night," he said enigmatically, and wagged his head with a chuckle. "Worse dreams," he repeated. "What does Monsieur the Colonel mean?" I inquired. "I am trying to find that out myself," said the Colonel, "and I think I shall. When I get the first inch of the thread fast between my finger and thumb, it goes hard, but I follow it up bit by bit, little by little, tracing it this way and that, and up and down and round about until the whole clue is wound up on my thumb, and the end and its secret fast in my fingers. Ingenious, crafty as 5 foxes, wide awake as a weasel. Parbleu! If I had descended to that occupation, I should have made my fortune as a spy. Good wine here? He glanced interrogatively at my bottle. Very good, said I. Will Monsieur the Colonel try a glass? He took the largest he could find and filled it, raised it with a bow, and drank it slowly. Bah, that is not it, he exclaimed with some disgust, filling it again. You ought to have told me to order your burgundy, and they would not have brought you that stuff. I got away from this man as soon as I civilly could, and, putting on my hat, I walked out with no other company than my sturdy walking stick. I visited the inn yard and looked up to the windows of the Countess's apartments. They were closed, however, and I had not even the unsubstantial consolation of contemplating the light in which that beautiful lady was at that moment, writing or reading or sitting and thinking of anyone you please. I bore this serious privation as well as I could, and took a little saunter through the town. I shan't bore you with moonlight effects, nor with the maunderings of a man who has fallen in love at first sight with a beautiful face. My ramble, it is enough to say, occupied about half an hour, and, returning by a slight detour, I found myself in a little square, with about 2 high gabled houses on each side, and a rude stone statue, worn by centuries of rain, on a pedestal in the center of the pavement. Looking at this statue was a slight and rather tall man whom I instantly recognized as the Marquis d'Amonville. He knew me almost as quickly. He walked a step towards me, shrugged, and laughed. You are surprised to find Monsieur Troqueville staring at that old stone figure by moonlight. Anything to pass the time. You see, I suffer from ennui, as I do. No, I read that wrong. You, I see, suffer from ennui, as I do. These little provincial towns. Heavens, what an effort it is to live in them. If I could regret having formed in early life a friendship that does me honor, I think it's condemning me to a sojourn in such a place would make me do so. You go on toward Paris, I suppose, in the morning. I've ordered horses. As for me, I await a letter or an arrival. Either would emancipate me, but I can't say how soon either event will happen. Can I be of any use in this matter? I began. No, monsieur, I thank you 1,000 times. No, this is a piece in which every role is already cast. I am but an amateur, and induced solely by friendship to take a part. So he talked on for a time as we walked slowly toward the Belle Étoile, and then came a silence, which I broke by asking him if he knew anything of Colonel Gaillard. Oh, yes, to be sure. He is a little mad. He has had some bad injuries of the head. He used to plague the people in the War Office to death. He has always some delusion. They contrive some employment for him. Not regimental, of course, but in this campaign, Napoleon who could spare nobody, placed him in command of a regiment. He was always a desperate fighter, and such men were more than ever needed. There is, or was, a second inn in this town called L'Écu de France. At its door the Marquis stopped, bade me a mysterious good night, and disappeared. As I walked slowly toward my inn, I met, in the shadow of a row of poplars, the garçon who had brought me my burgundy a little time ago. I was thinking of Colonel Gaillard, and I stopped the little waiter as he passed me. You said, I think, that Colonel Gaillard was at the Belle Étoile for a week at one time. Yes, monsieur. Is he perfectly in his right mind? The waiter stared. Perfectly, monsieur. Has he been suspected at any time of being out of his mind? Never, monsieur. He is a little noisy, but a very shrewd man. What is a fellow to think? I muttered as I walked on. I was soon within sight of the lights of the Belle Étoile. A carriage with 4 horses stood in the moonlight at the door, and a furious altercation was going on in the hall, in which the yell of Colonel Gaillard out-topped all other sounds. Most young men like, at least, to witness a row, but intuitively I felt that this would interest me in a very special manner. I had only 50 yards to run when I found myself in the hall of the old inn. The principal actor in this strange drama was indeed the colonel, who stood facing the old Count de Saint-Alier, who, in his traveling costume, with his black silk scarf covering the lower part of his face, confronted him. He had evidently been intercepted in an endeavor to reach his carriage. A little in the rear of the Count stood the Countess, also in traveling costume, with her thick black veil down and holding, in her delicate fingers, a white rose. You can't conceive a more diabolical effigy of hate and fury than the colonel. The knotted veins stood out on his forehead. His eyes were leaping from their sockets. He was grinding his teeth, and froth was on his lips. His sword was drawn in his hand, and he accompanied his yelling denunciations with stamps upon the floor and flourishes of his weapon in the air. The host of the Belle Étoile was talking to the colonel in soothing terms utterly thrown away. 2 waiters, pale with fear, stared uselessly from behind. The colonel screamed and thundered and whirled his sword. I was not sure of your red birds of prey. I could not believe you would have the audacity to travel on high roads, and to stop at honest inns and lie under the same roof with honest men. You both, vampire, wolves, ghouls, some in the gendarme, I say, by Saint Peter, and all the devils. If either of you try to get out of that door, I'll take your heads off. For a moment I had stood, aghast. Here was a situation. Good job, Richard. This is indeed a situation. I walked up to the lady. She laid her hand wildly upon my arm. Oh, monsieur, she whispered in great agitation. That dreadful madman. What are we to do? He won't let us pass. He will kill my husband. Fear nothing, madam, I answered with romantic devotion. And stepping between the Count and Gaillard as he shrieked his invective, Hold your tongue and clear the way, you ruffian, you bully, you coward, I roared. A faint cry escaped the lady, which more than repaid the risk I ran, as the sword of the frantic soldier, after a moment's astonished pause, flashed in the air to cut me down. Dun dun dun. End of chapter. Oh, Richard. You're not the smartest. Well, okay, I do feel I did apologize for this last stream on Twitch. I feel like I need to apologize again to any French people listening. I'm notoriously terrible at accents. I am doing my best with this. I am really bad at accents, though. Yeah. All right, should we keep going? Chapter 7, The White Rose. So you're doing a decent job. Well, I appreciate that, and I'm glad that it sounds decent to a North American ear. I feel like any French person would think I sound horrible, but, well, okay. Chapter 7, The White Rose. I was too quick for Colonel Gaillard, as he raised his sword, reckless of all consequences but my condign punishment, and quite resolved to cleave me to the teeth. I struck him across the side of his head with my heavy stick, and while he staggered back, I struck him another blow, nearly in the same place, that felled him to the floor, where he lay, as if dead. Is French the official language of Canada, or is that only Quebec? It is the official language of Canada. English and French are both the official languages. There's no first or second. They are both equally the official languages of Canada. There are more Anglo speakers in Canada, but both official languages. But the Quebecois accent is different. Yeah. But I guess the French teachers I had, which again, it was a long time ago, so I forget. I used to be better at French, but when I was in France, I went there shortly out of high school, and based on my accent speaking French, they were really surprised that I was Canadian. Apparently, they were guessing that I was a British person speaking French, which I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. But I was never taught the Quebecois accent, so I don't know. Alright, so he smacked the guy with a stick. Shillelagh. Okay. I did not care one of his own regimental buttons, whether he was dead or not. I was, at that moment, carried away by such a tumult of delightful and diabolical emotions. I broke his sword under my foot and flung the pieces across the street. The old Count de Saint-Elier skipped nimbly without looking to the right or left, or thanking anybody, over the floor, out the door, down the steps, and into his carriage. Instantly, I was at the side of the beautiful Countess, thus left to shift for herself. I offered her my arm, which she took, and I led her to the carriage. She entered, and I shut the door. All this without a word. I was about to ask if there were any commands with which she would honor me. My hand was laid upon the lower edge of the window, which was open. The lady's hand was laid upon mine, timidly and excitedly. Her lips almost touched my cheek as she whispered, hurriedly, "I may never see you more, and oh, that I could forget you. Go, farewell, for God's sake, go." I pressed her hand for a moment. She withdrew it, but tremblingly pressed into mine the rose which she had held in her fingers during the agitating scene she had just passed through. All this took place while the Count was commanding, entreating, cursing his servants, tipsy and out of the way during the crisis. My conscience afterwards insinuated, by my clever contrivance. They now mounted to their places with the agility of alarm. The postilions' whips cracked, the horses scrambled into a trot, and away rolled the carriage, with its precious freightage, along the quaint main street, in the moonlight, toward Paris. I stood on the pavement till it was quite lost to eye and ear in the distance. With a deep sigh, I then turned, my white rose folded in my handkerchief, the little parting gash, the favor secret, sweet and precious, which no mortal eye but hers and mine had seen conveyed to me. Why? It's like in a weird formatting for that. Hold on, let me show you. Hold on, let me turn that off, and let me turn the, yeah, do you see the weird formatting? That's really weird. I don't know. Where's my Kindle? Here it is. What does that mean? Why is it spelled like that? Is that just a weird Kindle thing? Or are we supposed to read into that? I thought it was going to be a note from her. Anyway. That's his thoughts. The whole thing is his internal narration, though. Is Word on the online copy also? Interesting. About the sword breaking, I mean, perhaps it was more like a rapier. Like, I don't know, something really thin. Okay. Well, let's carry on. I'm not sure if there's a reason for that formatting, but the care of the host of the Belle Étoile and his assistants had raised the wounded hero of 100 fights partly against the wall, and propped him at each side with portmanteaus and pillows, and poured a glass of brandy, which was duly placed to his account, into his big mouth, where, for the first time, such a godsend remained unswallowed. A bald-headed little military surgeon of 60, with spectacles, who had cut off 87 legs and arms to his own share after the Battle of Eylau, having retired with his sword and his saw, his laurels and his sticking plaster to this, his native town, was called in, and rather thought the gallant colonel's skull was fractured. At all events, there was concussion at the seat of thought, and quite enough work for his remarkable self-healing powers to occupy him for a fortnight. I began to grow a little uneasy, a disagreeable surprise if my excursion, in which I was to break banks and hearts and, as you see, heads, should end upon the gallows or the guillotine. I was not clear in those times of political oscillation which was the established apparatus. The colonel was conveyed, snorting apoplectically, to his room, I saw my host in the apartment in which we had supped. Wherever you employ a force of any sort to carry a point of real importance, reject all nice calculations of economy. Better to be 1,000% over the mark than the smallest fraction of a unit under it. I instinctively felt this. I ordered a bottle of my landlord's very best wine, made him partake with me in the proportion of 2 glasses to 1, and then told him that he must not decline a trifling souvenir from a guest who had been so charmed with all he had seen of the renowned Belle Étoile. Thus saying, I placed 35 Napoleons in his hand, a touch of which his countenance, by no means encouraging before, grew sunny. His manners thawed, and it was plain, as he dropped the coins hastily into his pocket, that benevolent relations had been established between us. I immediately placed the colonel's broken head upon the tapis, the rug. We both agreed that if I had not given him that rather smart tap of my walking cane, he would have beheaded half the inmates of the Belle Étoile. There was not a waiter in the house who would not verify that statement on oath. The reader may suppose that I had other motives, beside the desire to escape the tedious inquisition of the law, for desiring to recommence my journey to Paris with the least possible delay. Judge what was my horror, then, to learn that, for love or money, horses were nowhere to be had that night. The last pair in town had been obtained from the Écu de France by a gentleman who dined and supped at the Belle Étoile and was obliged to proceed to Paris that night. Who was the gentleman? Had he actually gone? Could he possibly be induced to wait till morning? The gentleman was now upstairs getting his things together, and his name was Monsieur Troqueville. I ran upstairs. I found my servant, St. Clair, in my room. At sight of him, for a moment, my thoughts were turned into a different channel. "Well, St. Clair, tell me this moment who the lady is," I demanded. Wait, I can't remember. Is his servant French or English? He's got a French name. You guys still talking about how to break swords? I think his servant is French, right? Yeah. Okay. The lady is the daughter or wife, it matters not which, of the Count of de Saint-Alier. The old gentleman who was so near being sliced like a cucumber tonight, I am informed, by the sword of the General whom Monsieur, by a turn of fortune, has put to bed of an apoplexy. Hold your tongue, fool. The man's beastly drunk. He's sulking. I could talk if he liked. Who cares? Back up my things. Which are Monsieur Troqueville's apartments? He knew, of course. He always knew everything. Hi, Toasty. Hello, hello. Half an hour later, Monsieur Troqueville and I were traveling towards Paris in my carriage and with his horses. I ventured to ask the Marquis d'Amonville in a little while whether the lady who accompanied the Count was certainly the Countess. Has he not a daughter? Yes, I believe a very beautiful and charming young lady. I cannot say. It may have been she, his daughter, by an earlier marriage. I only saw the Count himself today. The Marquis was growing a little sleepy, and in a little while he actually fell asleep in his corner. I dozed and nodded, but the Marquis slept like a top. He awoke only for a minute or two at the next posting house, where he had fortunately secured horses by sending on his man, he told me. You will excuse my being so dull a companion, he said, but till tonight I have had but 2 hours sleep for more than 60 hours. I shall have a cup of coffee here. I have had my nap. Permit me to recommend you to do likewise. Their coffee is really excellent. He ordered 2 cups of café noir and waited with his head from the window. We will keep the cups, he said as he received them from the waiter. And the tray. Thank you. There was a little delay as he paid for these things, and then he took in the little tray and handed me a cup of coffee. I declined the tray, so he placed it on his own knees to act as a miniature table. I can't endure being waited for and hurried, he said. I like to sip my coffee at leisure. I agreed. It really was the very perfection of coffee. I, like Monsieur le Marquis, have slept very little for the last 2 or 3 nights. I find it difficult to keep awake. This coffee will do wonders for me. It refreshes one so. Before we had half done, the carriage was again in motion. For a time, our coffee made us chatty, and our conversation was animated. The Marquis was extremely good-natured, as well as clever, and gave me a brilliant and amusing account of Parisian life, schemes and dangers, all put so as to furnish me with practical warnings of the most valuable kind. In spite of the amusing and curious stories which the Marquis related with so much point and color, I felt myself again becoming gradually drowsy and dreamy. Perceiving this, no doubt, the Marquis good-naturedly suffered our conversation to subside into silence. The window next to him was open. He threw his cup out of it and did the same kind office for mine, and finally the little tray flew after, and I heard it clank on the road. A valuable waif, no doubt, for some early wayfarer in wooden shoes. I leaned back in my corner. I had my beloved souvenir, my white rose, close to my heart, folded now in white paper. It inspired all manner of romantic dreams. I began to grow more and more sleepy, but actual slumber did not come. I was still viewing, with my half-closed eyes, from my corner, diagonally, the interior of the carriage. I wished for sleep, but the barrier between waking and sleeping seemed absolutely insurmountable, and instead, I entered into a state of novel and indescribable indolence. The Marquis lifted his dispatch box from the floor, placed it on his knees, unlocked it, and took out what proved to be a lamp, which he hung with 2 hooks attached to it to the window opposite to him. He lighted it with a match, put on his spectacles, and, taking out a bundle of letters, began to read them carefully. You had the best nap in here earlier? Oh, I'm so glad to hear that, Toasty. Well, we were making way very slowly. My impatience had hitherto employed 4 horses from stage to stage. We were in this emergency only too happy to have secured 2, but the difference in pace was depressing. I grew tired of the monotony of seeing the spectacled Marquis reading, folding, and docketing letter after letter. I wished to shut out the image which wearied me, but something prevented my being able to shut my eyes. I tried again and again, but positively I had lost the power of closing them. I would have rubbed my eyes, but I could not stir my hand. My will no longer acted on my body. I found that I could not move one joint or muscle, no more than I could, by an effort of my will, have turned the carriage about. Up to this, I had experienced no sense of horror. Whatever it was, simple nightmare was not the cause. I was awfully frightened. Was I in a fit? It was horrible to see my good-natured companion pursue his occupation so serenely, when he might have dissipated my horrors by a single shake. I made a stupendous exertion to call out, but in vain. I repeated the effort again and again, with no result. My companion now tied up his letters and looked out of the window, humming an air from an opera. He drew back his head and said, turning to me, "Yes, I see the lights. We shall be there in 2 or 3 minutes." He looked more closely at me, and with a kind smile and a little shrug, he said, "Poor child. How fatigued he must have been, how profoundly he sleeps. When the carriage stops, he will waken." He then replaced his letters in the box, locked it, put his spectacles in his pocket, and again looked out of the window. Box? Okay, I'm not getting any. It's spelled box hyphen box, so I don't know if that's an error or not. Is he drugged? Well, I don't know. The Marquis at least is not acting like he drugged him. It could be that he's got sleep paralysis. I don't know. We had entered a little town. I suppose it was past 2 o'clock by this time. The carriage drew up. I saw an inn door open and a light issuing from it. "Here we are," said my companion, turning gaily to me. But I did not awake. "Yes, how tired he must have been," he exclaimed, after he had waited for an answer. My servant was at the carriage door and opened it. "Your master sleeps soundly. He is so fatigué. It would be cruel to disturb him. You and I will go in. Will they change the horses and take some refreshment and choose something that Monsieur Beckett will like to take in the carriage? For when he awakes by and by, he will, I am sure, be hungry." That was such a bad accent. Oh, I'm so sorry. C'est à l'heure, sacré bleu. He trimmed his lamp, pouring in some oil and taking care not to disturb me. With another kind smile and another word of caution to my servant, he got out, and I heard him talking to St. Clair as they entered the inn door. And I was left in my corner in the carriage, in the same state. That is horrifying. End of chapter. That is horrifying. I am curious whether it's sleep paralysis or drugs, because it is possible that the Marquis put something in his coffee. But to what end? I don't know. Alright, should we read another chapter? Chapter 8. A 3 minutes visit. I have suffered extreme and protracted bodily pain at different periods of my life, but anything like that misery Thank God. I never endured before or since. I earnestly hope it may not resemble any type of death to which we are liable. I was, indeed, a spirit in prison, and unspeakable was my dumb and unmoving agony. The power of thought remained clear and active. Dull terror filled my mind. How would this end? Was it actual death? You will understand that my faculty of observing was unimpaired. I could hear and see anything as distinctly as ever I did in my life. It was simply that my will had, as it were, lost its hold of my body. I told you that the Marquis d'Amonville had not extinguished his carriage lamp on going into this village inn. I was listening intently, longing for his return, which might result by some lucky accident in awaking me from my catalepsy. Without any sound of steps approaching to announce an arrival, the carriage door suddenly opened, and a total stranger got in silently and shut the door. Wait, oh my God, my mind is like, because okay, the Marquis has been nothing but friendly, but Richard is damn stupid and told the Marquis that he basically just inherited like millions of dollars and is going to Paris to like gamble it. Let's see what happens. The lamp gave about as strong a light as a wax candle, so I could see the intruder perfectly. He was a young man with a dark grey loose surtout made with a sort of hood which was pulled over his head. I thought, as he moved, that I saw the gold band of a military undress cap under it, and I certainly saw the lace and buttons of a uniform on the cuffs of the coat that were visible under the wide sleeves of his outside wrapper. Hey, Will, thank you for gifting us up to Box. I'm really curious what a box is. Yeah, a fool and his money are soon parted. Maybe that's not it. But he's definitely dumb to talk about it. This young man had thick mustaches and an imperial. That must be a type of beard, right? An imperial, I'm guessing. And I observed that he had a red scar running upward from his lip across his cheek. He entered, shut the door softly, and sat down beside me. It was all done in a moment. Leaning toward me and shading his eyes with his gloved hand, he examined my face closely for a few seconds. This man had come as noiselessly as a ghost, and everything he did was accomplished with the rapidity and decision that indicated a well-defined and prearranged plan. His designs were evidently sinister. I thought he was going to rob and perhaps murder me. I lay, nevertheless, like a corpse under his hands. He inserted his hand in my breast pocket, from which he took my precious white rose and all the letters it contained, among which was a paper of some consequence to me. My letters he glanced at. They were plainly not what he wanted. My precious rose, too, he laid aside with them. It was evidently about the paper I have mentioned that he was concerned. For the moment he opened it, he began with a pencil in a small pocketbook to make rapid notes. This man seemed to glide through his work with a noiseless and cool celerity which argued, I thought, the training of the police department. He rearranged the papers, possibly in the very order in which he had found them, replaced them in my breast pocket, and was gone. His visit, I think, did not quite last 3 minutes. Very soon after his disappearance, I heard the voice of the Marquis once more. He got in, and I saw him look at me and smile, half envying me, I fancied, my sound repose. If he had but known all. Oh, Fidge, thank you so much for hanging out so late and being here to help out. I really appreciate it. I hope you sleep well tonight. We do have Jane and Sean also modded over on YouTube, so hopefully we'll be fine. Super appreciate it though, Fidge. Good night. Okay. He resumed his reading and docketing by the light of the little lamp which had just subserved the purposes of a spy. We were now out of the town, pursuing our journey at the same moderate pace. We had left the scene of my police visit, as I should have termed it, now 2 leagues behind us, when I suddenly felt a strange throbbing in one ear, and a sensation as if air passed through it into my throat. It seemed as if a bubble of air formed deep in my ear, swelled, and burst there. The indescribable tension of my brain seemed all at once to give way. There was an odd humming in my head, and a sort of vibration through every nerve of my body, such as I have experienced in a limb that has been, in popular phraseology, asleep. I uttered a cry and half rose from my seat, and then fell back, trembling, and with a sense of mortal faintness. The Marquis stared at me, took my hand, and earnestly asked if I was ill. I could only answer with a deep groan. What's all this then? I could answer only with a deep groan. Gradually, the process of restoration was completed, and I was able, though very faintly, to tell him how very ill I had been, and then to describe the violation of my letters during the time of his absence from the carriage. "Good heaven!" he exclaimed. "The miscreant did not get at my box. I satisfied him so far as I had observed on that point. He placed the box on the seat beside him and opened and examined its contents very minutely. "Yes, undisturbed, all safe, thank heaven," he murmured. "There are half a dozen letters here that I would not have some people read for a great deal." He now asked with a very kind anxiety all about the illness I complained of. When he had heard me, he said, "A friend of mine once had an attack as like yours as possible. It was on board ship and followed a state of high excitement. He was a brave man like you, and was called on to exert both his strength and his courage suddenly. An hour or 2 after, fatigue overpowered him, and he appeared to fall into a sound sleep. He really sank into a state which he afterwards described, so that I think it must have been precisely the same affection as yours." I'm happy to think that my attack was not unique. Did he ever experience a return of it? I knew him for years after, and never heard of any such thing. What strikes me is a parallel in the predisposing causes of each attack. Your unexpected and gallant end-to-end encounter at such desperate odds with an experienced swordsman like that insane colonel of dragoons, your fatigue, and finally your composing yourself as my other friend did to sleep. I wish, he resumed, one could make out who the coquin was who examined your letters. It is not worth turning back, however, because we should learn nothing. Those people always manage so adroitly. I am satisfied, however, that he must have been an agent of the police. A rogue of any other kind would have robbed you. I talked very little, being ill and exhausted, but the Marquis talked on agreeably. I need to pour a little water. I don't know, the Marquis is being a little sus here. The way he's trying to, like, poo-poo what happened and be like, no, it's because of, like, you did this brave act and then you were so tired and, oh, it happened to a friend. Like, he didn't fall asleep. Like, he was basically paralyzed, right? And that makes me feel more like the Marquis might be involved. I don't know, even though he's all like, oh no, what about my box? Reminds you of Milady. Although I didn't give Milady a French accent really, because I was even less confident at that time. Marquis is definitely sus, yeah. It's also like, I can't think of another way that Richard could have been drugged. So, and it's all like arranged that the Marquis happened to take the servant into the inn for those exact moments. It feels too organized. Maybe the scoundrel's sword was envenomed. Possibly. That would be pretty intense. We shall see. We shall see. We grow so intimate, said he at last, that I must remind you that I am not, for the present, the Marquis d'Amonville, but only Monsieur Troqueville. Nevertheless, when we get to Paris, although I cannot see you often, I may be of use. I shall ask you to name to me the hotel at which you mean to put up, because the Marquis being, as you are aware, on his travels, the Hôtel d'Armonville is, for the present, tenanted only by 2 or 3 old servants, who must not even see Monsieur Troqueville. That gentleman will, nevertheless, contrive to get you access to the box of Monsieur le Marquis, as the opera as well, possibly, as to other places more difficult. And so soon as the diplomatic office of the Marquis d'Armonville is ended and he at liberté to declare himself, he will not excuse his friend, Monsieur Beckett, from fulfilling his promise to visit him this autumn at the Chateau d'Armonville. You may be sure I thanked the Marquis. The nearer we got to Paris, the more I valued his protection. The countenance of a great man on the spot, just then, talking so kind an interest in the stranger whom he had, as it were, blundered upon, might make my visit ever so many degrees more delightful than I had anticipated. Nothing could be more gracious than the manner and looks of the Marquis, and, as I still thanked him, the carriage suddenly stopped in front of the place where a relay of horses awaited us, and where, as it turned out, we were to part. End of chapter. You just invested enough to buy 51% of a vampire hunting company? Wait, what? He stomped on the sword, but then he threw the pieces into the street. So he did technically touch the blade. I feel like it's probably to do with the coffee, but it's a dad joke? Okay, I did not get it. I've been outed as being not a dad. Oh, a stakeholder. Oh my god. Wow. Wow. Someone needs to screenshot that for Fidge. He'd be proud. Okay. How are we feeling? Do we want to do another chapter? The next chapter is chapter 9. Let's do another one and then see how we're feeling. Okay. Chapter 9. Gossip and Counsel. My eventful journey was over at last. I sat in my hotel window looking out upon brilliant Paris, which had, in a moment, recovered all its gaiety, and more than its accustomed bustle. Everyone had read of the kind of excitement that followed the catastrophe of Napoleon and the second restoration of the Bourbons. I need not, therefore, even if at this distance I could recall and describe my experiences and impressions of the peculiar aspect of Paris in those strange times. It was, to be sure, my first visit, but often as I have seen it since, I don't think I ever saw that delightful capital in a state pleasurably so excited and exciting. I had been 2 days in Paris and had seen all sorts of sights and experienced none of that rudeness and insolence of which others complained from the exasperated officers of the defeated French army. I must say this also, my romance had taken complete possession of me, and the chance of seeing the object of my dream gave a secret and delightful interest to my rambles and drives in the streets and environs, and my visits to the galleries and other sights of the metropolis. I had neither seen nor heard of Count or Countess, nor had the Marquis d'Amonville made any sign. I had quite recovered the strange indisposition under which I had suffered during my night journey. It was now evening, and I was beginning to fear that my patrician acquaintance had quite forgotten me, when the waiter presented me the card of Monsieur Droqueville, and with no small elation and hurry, I desired him to show the gentleman up. In came the Marquis d'Amonville, kind and gracious as ever. "I am a night bird at present," said he, so soon as we had exchanged the little speeches which are usual. "I keep in the shade during..." Man, sometimes it's easier to slip into than other times. "I keep in the shade during the daytime, and even now I hardly venture to come in a close carriage. The friends for whom I have undertaken a rather critical service have so ordained it. They think all is lost if I am known to be in Paris. First, let me present you these orders for my box. I am so vexed that I cannot command it oftener during the next fortnight. During my absence, I had directed my secretary to give it for any night to the first of my friends who might apply, and the result is that I find next to nothing left at my disposal." I thanked him very much. "And now, a word in my office of mentor. You have not come here, of course, without introduction. I produced half a dozen letters, the addresses of which he looked at. "Oh, don't mind these letters," he said. "I will introduce you. I will take you myself from house to house. One friend at your side is worth many letters. Make no intimacy, no acquaintances until then. You young men like best to exhaust the public amusements of a great city before embarrassing yourselves with the engagement of society. Go to all these. It will occupy you day and night for at least 3 weeks. When this is over, I shall be at liberté, and will myself introduce you to the brilliant but comparatively quiet routine of society. Place yourself in my hands, and in Paris, remember, when once in society, you are always there." I thanked him very much and promised to follow his counsels implicitly. He seemed pleased and said, "I shall now tell you some of the places you ought to go to. Take your map and write letters or numbers upon the points I will indicate, and we will make out a little list. All the places that I shall mention to you are worth seeing." Okay, see, this is also really sus, because he's saying, don't use your letters of introduction. I'll introduce you, which on the surface sounds really nice, but the Marquis has to pretend not to be in town for another 3 weeks. And he's saying, don't make any acquaintances for the next 3 weeks. Isolate yourself, just go to these points. And I feel like that feels a little odd. Hi, gentle dragon, thank you. You know, like he could say, "Hey, I'm willing to do these introductions. If you want to wait, I'll do that. If you're eager to make those introductions with just the letters, like, go ahead." Do you know what I mean? Like, the way he's like, make sure no one knows who you are for the next 3 weeks. Like, I don't know. I'm just wondering if there's some scheme to rob him. We're not totally clear what was in that important piece of paper that the policeman, ? Read and took notes from. Anyway. In this methodical way, and with a great deal of amusing and scandalous anecdote, he furnished me with a catalogue and a guide, which, to a seeker of novelty and pleasure, was invaluable. Can I also point out that he met this man in a random inn on the road, and the man said, "I'm the Marquis blah blah blah," and he just like takes him at his word. I mean, he probably is a Marquis, but like, you could just say you were anyone. You were at TwitchCon over the weekend. Did you have a good time? It sounds like it. All the characters are sus, pretty much. Like, even Richard. I mean, he's an idiot. But, yeah. In a fortnight, perhaps in a week, he said, I shall be at leisure to be of real use to you. In the meantime, be on your guard. You must not play. You will be robbed if you do. Remember, you are surrounded here by plausible swindlers and villains of all kinds who subsist by devouring strangers. Oh, my accent. Trust no one but those you know. See, he's like trying to isolate him. He's like, don't do any gambling. Now, if the Marquis wants to rob him, then obviously he doesn't want him going off and doing gambling and potentially losing a bunch of his money before he's able to rob him. I'm just conjecturing. I don't know what's going to happen. I've never read a story in Paris where the characters weren't mega sus. Okay, that's true. I'm sure it's coincidence. I thanked him again and promised to profit by his advice, but my heart was too full of the beautiful lady of the Belle Étoile to allow our interview to close without an effort to learn something about her. I therefore asked for the Count and Countess de Saint-Alyre, whom I had had the good fortune to extricate from an extremely unpleasant row in the hall of the inn. Alas, he had not seen them since. He did not know where they were staying. Oh, they had a fine old house only a few leagues from Paris, but he thought it probable that they would remain, for a few days at least, in the city, as preparations would no doubt be necessary, after so long an absence, for their reception at home. How long have they been away? About 8 months, I think. They are poor, I think you said? What you would consider poor. But, monsieur, the Count has an income which affords them the comforts and even the elegancies of life, living as they do, in a very quiet and retired way, in this cheap country. Then they are very happy. Oh, one would say they ought to be happy. And what prevents? He is jealous. Oh, but his wife, she gives him no cause. I am afraid she does. How, monsieur? I always thought she was a little too, a great deal too, too what, monsieur? Too handsome. But although she has remarkable fine eyes, exquisite features, the most delicate complexion in the world, I believe that she is a woman of probity. You have never seen her? There was a lady, muffled up in a cloak, with a very thick veil on, the other night, in the hall of the Belle Étoile, when I broke that fellow's head who was bullying the old Count. But her veil was so thick I could not see her feature through it. My answer was diplomatic, you observe. Or she may have been the Count's daughter. Do they quarrel? Ooh, he and his wife. Yes. Oh, a little. Oh. And, what do they quarrel about? It is a long story. About, the lady's diamonds. They are valuable. They are worth, Le Perreleux says, about, 1,000,000 of francs. The Count wishes them sold and turned into revenue, which he offers to settle as she please. The Countess, whose they are, resists, and for a reason which I rather think she can't disclose to him. And pray, what is that? I asked, my curiosity a good deal piqued. She is thinking, I conjecture, how well she will look in them when she marries her second husband. Oh? Yes, to be sure. But the Count de Saint-Alyre is a good man, admirable, and extremely intelligent. I should wish so much to be presented to the Count. You tell me he's so agreeably married. But they are living quite out of the world. He takes her now and then to the opera or to a public entertainment, but that is all. And he must remember so much of the old regime, and so many of the scenes of the revolution. Yes, the very man for a philosopher like you. And he falls asleep after dinner, and his wife don't. But seriously, he has retired from the gay and the great world, and is grown apathetic, and so has his wife, and nothing seems to interest her now, not even her husband. The Marquis stood up to take his leave. Don't risk your money, he said. You will soon have an opportunity of laying out some of it to great advantage. several collection of really good pictures belonging to persons who have mixed themselves up in this Bonapartiste restoration must come within a few weeks to the hammer. You can do wonders when these sales commence. There will be startling bargain. Reserve yourself for them. I shall let you know all about it. By the by, he said, stopping short as he approached the door, I was so near forgetting. There is to be next week the very thing you would enjoy so much, because you see so little of it in England. I mean, a bal masqué, conducted, it is said, with more than usual splendor. It takes place at Versailles. All the world will be there. Oh, there is such a rush for cards. But I think I may promise you one. Good night. Adieu. End of chapter. A masked ball at Versailles. Oh my god. I think scandal is gonna happen. I think scandal's gonna happen. Yeah, he's retired from the gay. Oh my goodness. Okay, so we know that they live a little out of the way. At least the gossip is that she thinks ahead to her second husband. I mean, he is a lot older than her. The Count is a lot older than the Countess, so it is a novella. Yep, DJ, this one is a novella. I think it's like 29 chapters or something. Yeah. So we are not even halfway through it. We're nearly halfway through it. The accent's okay? Okay, well, again, I apologize to anyone French. I'm doing my best. Hi, Minnesota girl. Aw, thank you. Thank you. You guys are so sweet. Yeah, no, again, he has, the Marquis has impressed upon Beckett, don't spend your money. He's like, don't worry, there's going to be great opportunities, hold on to it. And again, maybe he's actually looking out for him, or maybe he's planning to rob him and doesn't want him going and spending and gambling all his money away before he can rob him. I don't know. Maybe he's great. I'm really excited to read about a masked ball at Versailles. Okay, so the question is, the question is, hold on, that's not what I'm looking for. The question is, do we want to read more? Do we want to read more? I know you already said you didn't use an accent from a lady, but my brain is merging that accent with the way her voice sounded and insisting it's glorious. Yeah, I mean, I may have put like a little bit of inflection, particularly if she was saying like monsieur or whatever, but definitely didn't lean into an accent. Yeah. Do you guys want another chapter? I think I've got one more in me before I'll need to take a stretch break. We're at chapter 10. Should we read another chapter? That was chapter 9, yeah. Probably one chapter more tonight. The stream will not end at that point. It'll keep going on Twitch after that. stretch first if needed. I think I'm okay to read one more chapter, and then we'll take a proper stretch break, and then do some ASMR over on Twitch. Alright. Chapter 10, The Black Veil. Speaking the language fluently and with unlimited... Yeah, that's the other thing. Okay, this is all obviously written in English, and I'm giving the French people, you know, an approximation of an accent that a French person would use while speaking English. But in actuality, they're all speaking French, because our protagonist, Richard, speaks French. But, yeah. Yeah. Oh, Sean, thank you for popping that information over on the YouTube chat. Thank you for that. Okay. Chapter 10, The Black Veil. Speaking the language fluently and with unlimited money, there was nothing to prevent my enjoying all that was enjoyable in the French capital. Shut up, Richard. Alright. You may easily suppose how 2 days were passed. At the end of that time, and at about the same hour, Monsieur Troqueville called again. Courtly, good-natured, gay, as usual, he told me that the masquerade ball was fixed for the next Wednesday, and that he had applied for a card for me. How awfully unlucky. I was so afraid I should not be able to go. He stared at me for a moment with a suspicious and menacing look, which I did not understand, in silence, and then inquired rather sharply, "And will Monsieur Beckett be good enough to say why not?" I was a little surprised, but I answered the simple truth. I had made an engagement for that evening with 2 or 3 English friends, and did not see how I could. "Just so. You English, wherever you are, always look out for your English boors, your beer and beefsteak." Boars, beer, and beefsteak. Hell yeah. English culture. The way it's spelled is so funny too. B-I-F-S-T-E-K. Beefsteak. Sorry, that got me. "Your beer and beefsteak. And when you come here, instead of trying to learn something of the people you visit and pretend to study, you are guzzling and swearing and smoking with one another, and no wiser or more polished at the end of your travels than if you had been all the time carousing in a booth at Greenwich." He laughed sarcastically and looked as if he could have poisoned me. Oh. He's lost his mask is slipping, I think. Art tax. First comment, gay, as usual. Oh my god. He's mad, which makes me think more that he had a plan. Because the audacity for him to be like, "Wow, you're always, you English are always just hanging out with each other instead of getting to know other French people," when 2 days earlier he had been like, "Don't use your letters of introduction. Don't introduce yourself to any French people here. Wait 3 weeks." Like, it doesn't check out. There it is, said he, throwing the card on the table. Take it or leave it, just as you please. I suppose I shall have my trouble for my pains, but it is not usual when a man such as I takes trouble, asks a favor, and secures a privilege for an acquaintance to treat him so. This was astonishingly impertinent. I was shocked, offended, penitent. I had possibly committed unwittingly a breach of good breeding, according to French ideas, which almost justified the brusque severity of the Marquis's undignified rebuke. In a confusion, therefore, of many feelings, I hastened to make my apologies, and to propitiate the chance friend who showed me so much disinterested kindness, I told him that I would, at any cost, break through the engagement in which I had unluckily entangled myself, that I had spoken with too little reflection, and that I had certainly had not thanked him at all in proportion to his kindness and to my real estimate of it. Pray, say not a word more. My vexation was entirely on your account, and I expressed it, I am only too conscious, in terms a great deal too strong, which I am sure your good nature will pardon. Those who know me a little better are aware that I sometimes say a good deal more than I intend. I am always sorry when I do. Monsieur Beckett will forget that his old friend, Monsieur Troqueville, has lost his temper in his cause for a moment, and we are as good friends as before. He smiled like the Monsieur Troqueville of the Belle Étoile, and extended his hand, which I took very respectfully and cordially. Our momentary quarrel had left us only better friends. Oh, Richard, you damn fool. Yucca no. Hello. You're French and he's English, you're mortal enemies. I mean, I feel like I would not want to go as an English person into France right after beating the French in a war. I feel like probably a lot of people would hate you, but Richard doesn't care. Richard doesn't give a shit. Richard's like, I'm 6 feet tall and I'm handsome and I'm a millionaire. And I'm going on vacation. I'm gonna scoop up some married women. The Marquis then told me I'd better secure a bed in some hotel at Versailles, as a rush would be made to take them, and advised my going down next morning for the purpose. I ordered horses accordingly for 11 o'clock, and after a little more conversation, the Marquis d'Amonville bade me good night, and ran down the stairs with his handkerchief to his mouth and nose, and, as I saw from my window, jumped into his closed carriage again, and drove away. He's hiding his face because he's not meant to be in Paris right now. Or maybe Richard's super stinky, I don't know. Next day, I was at Versailles. Or he's a wanted man. I mean, it could be that. It could be that. I'm very intrigued. Next day, I was at Versailles. As I approached the door of the Hôtel de France, it was plain that I was not a moment too soon, if indeed I were not already too late. A crowd of carriages were drawn up around the entrance, so that I had no chance of approaching, except by dismounting and pushing my way among the horses. The hall was full of servants and gentlemen screaming to the proprietor, who, in a state of polite distraction, was assuring them, one and all, There was not a room or a closet disengaged in his entire house. I slipped out again, leaving the hall to those who were shouting, expostulating, and wheedling, in the delusion that the host might, if he pleased, manage something for them. I jumped into my carriage and drove, at my horse's best pace, to the Hôtel de Réservoir. The blockade about this door was as complete as the other. The result was the same. It was very provoking, but what was to be done? My postilion had, a little officiously, while I was in the hall talking with the hotel authorities, got his horses, bit by bit, as other carriages moved away, to the very steps of the inn door. Well, this arrangement was very convenient so far as getting in again was concerned, but this accomplished, how were we to get on? There were carriages in front and carriages behind, and no less than 4 rows of carriages of all sorts outside. I had, at this time, remarkably long and clear sight, and if I had been impatient before, guess what my feelings were when I saw an open carriage pass along the narrow strip of roadway left open at the other side. A barouche in which I was certain I recognized the veiled countess and her husband. This carriage had been brought to a walk by a cart which occupied the whole breadth of the narrow way, and was moving with the customary tardiness of such vehicles. I should have done more wisely if I had jumped down on the trottoir and run round the block of carriages in front of the barouche, but unfortunately I was more of a Murat than a Moltke, and preferred a direct charge upon my object to relying on tactique. I dashed across the back seat of a carriage which was next to mine, I don't know how, tumbled through a sort of gig in which an old gentleman and a dog were dozing, stepped with an incoherent apology over the side of an open carriage in which were 4 gentlemen engaged in a hot dispute, tripped at the far side in getting out, and fell flat against the backs of a pair of horses, who instantly began plunging and threw me head foremost in the dust. Hi, Ketu. Hello. Hello. Good to see you. To those who observed my reckless charge, without being in the secret of my object, I must have appeared demented. Fortunately, the interesting barouche had passed before the catastrophe, and covered as I was with dust, and my hat blocked, you may be sure I did not care to present myself before the object of my quixotic devotion. I stood for a while amid a storm of sacréing, tempered disagreeably with laughter, and in the midst of these, while endeavoring to beat the dust from my clothes with my handkerchief, I heard a voice with which I was acquainted call, "Monsieur Beckett!" I looked and saw the Marquis peeping from a carriage window. It was a welcome sight. Hey, Tweel, thank you for gifting a sub to Old King Bear. Thank you, that's so kind. The funny thing is, Ketu, that joke works in French as well, because chat is French for cat. Sometimes I like to do little bilingual puns with emojis, where I'll text someone and be like, "Are you up for a," and then just put a cat emoji to be like, "Are you up for a chat?" But yes, either one is good. In a moment, I was at his carriage side. "You may well leave Versailles," he said. "You have learned, no doubt, that there is not a bed to hire in either of the hotels, and I can add that there is not a room to let in the whole town. But I have managed something for you that will answer just as well. Tell your servant to follow us. Get in here and sit beside me. Fortunately, an opening in the closely packed carriages had just occurred, and mine was approaching. I directed the servant to follow us, and the Marquis, having said a word to his driver, we were immediately in motion. I will bring you to a comfortable place, the very existence of which is known to but few Parisians. Well, knowing how things were here, I secured a room for you. It is only a mile away, and an old, comfortable inn called le Dragon Volant. It was fortunate for you that my tiresome business called me to this place so early. I think we had driven about 1.5 miles to the further side of the palace when we found ourselves upon a narrow old road with the woods of Versailles on one side and much older trees of a size seldom seen in France on the other. We pulled up before an antique and solid inn built of cane stone, in a fashion richer and more florid than was ever usual in such houses, and which indicated that it was originally designed for the private mansion of some person of wealth, and probably, as the wall bore many carved shields and supporters, of distinction also. I'm not sure if it's pronounced cane stone or can stone, but it is the name of an industrial city and river port in Normandy in northern France. So I guess the stone came from there. A kind of porch, less ancient than the rest, projected hospitably with a wide and florid arch over which, cut in high relief in stone and painted and gilded, was the sign of the inn. This was the Flying Dragon, with wings of brilliant red and gold, expanded, and its tail, pale green and gold, twisted and knotted into ever so many rings, and ending in a burnished point, barbed like the dart of death. I shan't go in, but you will find it a comfortable place, and at all events better than nothing. I would go in with you, but my incognito forbids. You will, I dare say, be all the better pleased to learn that the inn is haunted. I should have been in my young days, I know. But don't allude to this awful fact in hearing of your host, for I believe it is a sore sujet. Adieu. If you want to enjoy yourself at the ball, take my advice and go in a domino. I shall think to look in, and certainly if I do, in the same costume. How shall we recognize one another? Let me see. Something held in the fingers. Flower won't do, so many people will have flowers. Suppose you get a red cross, a couple of inches long. You're an Englishman. Stitched or pinned on the breast of your domino. And I a white one? Yes, that will do very well. And whatever room you go into, keep near the door till we meet. I shall look for you at all the doors I pass, and you, in the same way, for me. And we must find each other soon. So, that is understood. I can't enjoy a thing of that kind with any but a young person. A man of my age requires the contagion of young spirits and the companionship of someone who enjoys everything spontaneously. Farewell. We meet tonight. By this time I was standing on the road. I shut the carriage door, bid him goodbye, and away he drove. Okay, this is so sus. everyone's gonna be in costume here. He's telling him what to wear. He's gonna wear the exact same thing, but they're gonna have they're each gonna have a little cross somewhere on them in red for Richard and in white for the Marquis. And this really sounds like he's setting poor Dickie up for something, you know? Because now anyone could be dressed like this and Richard would think it was the Marquis. Or the Marquis could, like, dress like... all sorts of things could go on. Oh, you think they're just going on a date? Wow. That would be a fun twist. That would be a fun twist. I'm also really excited for this haunted inn. This is okay, that whole scene felt so modern and so slapstick. He sees the girl he likes way out there, but he's like in a traffic jam. And so he starts crawling through other people's carriages as a way to get to her. And he's scrambling over people's laps, and there's dogs, and he runs into a horse's ass, and he's like covered in dust, and everyone's laughing at him. Like, that felt like so modern, you know? Like something you'd see in a movie. If the French folktales are anything to go by, he's gonna try to get Richard to sleep with his spouse. I don't think the Marquis has a spouse. Not that he's spoken of. But yeah. Also, is he even a Marquis? This masquerade idea reminds you of the Pink Panther. Like the idea of a masquerade as a cover for a crime. Voltaire has that feel too. I'm enjoying this story so far. Like, Richard's an idiot, but he's a well-intentioned idiot. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's just really privileged and dumb. But I think he's like nice. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's not like an evil person. He's just privileged and dumb. He can fight, yeah. You hated him? I hated how he stalked a woman who basically made it very clear that she's not interested. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. True. Oh, dear. Don't feel bad for him just because he's dumb. He partook of her singing illicitly. Oh my god. Oh man. Do you think he's an endearing fool? I mean, no, it's not endearing. It's like, it's pathetic. I'm like, oh, god damn it, Richard. Like, you can do better than this. Song snatching. Christ. Yeah, it's just like, it's like sad to watch. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. One of your favorite genres. No, he wouldn't be a rom-com hero. He'd be more like, I don't know. Yeah, he's just like, I hope he learns a lesson at some point and has character growth is what I hope for him. 'Cause he's not evil, right? He is a creep and he's dumb, but he's not. Neither of those things are born out of like evil motives, you know, which doesn't excuse the behavior, but at least it means that like at his core he's not an evil person, you know. Like even his like creeping on the Countess is because he's like actually like in the throes of romance, which is straight dumb. He's straight dumb. But it's not because he's like, oh, I want to harm her or rob her or anything, you know. It's like, oh my god, I'm in love with her and she must be in love. Like, he's stupid. Poor Richard. Oh, you poor idiot. Yeah, I mean, he's gonna learn a hard lesson. You don't tell a you don't just tell a stranger that you met that you've just come into millions. You're a fucking idiot, man. And now you're gonna get robbed or something. Oh yeah, when I say millions, that's in today's dollars. He came into 30,000 pounds in 1815. Yeah. The way you said he's stupid sounds. I'm enjoying him as a character, though. You know? Like, I'm really enjoying the story. He just wants to ruin her life. Like, I think he probably thinks that he's, like, would be better for her. Like, he needs to just, yeah. He needs some hard life lessons, unfortunately. Okay. Well, here's the plan. I think that's probably all the reading that we're going to do for tonight. I am thrilled that we were finally able to make the YouTube co-streaming work. So I'm going to be ending that in just a moment. We will be continuing on Twitch, where we're going to do ASMR triggers and just cozy, soft-spoken and whispered hangouts. So if there is anyone over on YouTube that maybe wandered in, hello. You're welcome to come over to the Twitch stream for the rest of the stream if that sounds of interest to you. If you are only interested in the book reading, totally fair. Usually I read on Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday nights, and I am intending to be going live on YouTube for the reading portion for the foreseeable future. We're going to be giving that a try. However, this Thursday is canceled. I rarely cancel streams, but it's a belated Friendsgiving thing. So my next stream after tonight will be on Sunday night. Okay? So if you're on the YouTube side and only interested in the reading, I'll be back on Sunday night. And if you want more information, more content, I do have some VODs saved over on Twitch. I'm going to be working on getting VODs up on YouTube for books that we've read in the past, and hope to make some real headway on getting content up on the YouTube side. But yes, I am so thrilled and excited that this worked. To everyone who went over there to help contribute to watch hours and just test out the system and show support, I really appreciate that. So I'm gonna end on YouTube, and then we'll take like a 2-minute break so I can stretch, and then we'll be carrying on Twitch. Will there be no closet stream this year? TBD. We're gonna see how the weekend goes. I'm gonna try to. I can't promise though. But yes, YouTube side, have a good night. Have a good night.